Hi, you're listening to Lifestyle Locker Radio episode 100 with Jessie May Wolfe.
On average, we tend to have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Now, most people tend to have the same 3 to 4 thoughts. That is officially insane. I mean, Einstein said it, right? The definition of insanity is doing or saying the same thing over and over again, and that's how most people live.
Hi, I'm Dr. Josh Hant, and welcome to Lifestyle Locker Radio, where we help you create an awesome life and lifestyle. From nutrition to fitness, mindfulness to peak performance, and relationships to money mindset, we bring you on an amazing journey to help you unleash your human potential. So here's a little bit about our guest today, Jessie May Wolfe. She's a founder of the HeartRise Movement, a modern method of meditation and an empowering lifestyle. A speaker, an author, and a braveheart leader, her unique voice is changing the pulse of communities, igniting connection, and helping people see beyond their boundaries. With an extensive corporate and creative background in fashion, publishing, and marketing, Jessie May's experience traveling the globe, coaching and inspiring thousands of entrepreneurs and changemakers moved her to develop a method of meditation that is accessible for everyone. Jessie May's signature HeartRise Method experience and programs are the expression of her life's commitment to understand the infinite wisdom of the human heart. This innovative movement is considered to many to be the healing balm for a world whose heart is aching. Now available in her book, High on Heart, both boldly written and designed by Jessie May herself, HeartRise is a universal call to ignite the radiant heart power in all of us. Jessie May's heart holds a torch for everyone. Her radiance is contagious, which you'll find out soon. In the spirit of living high on heart, HeartRise liberates living, loving, and leading heart first. So without further ado, here's our guest, Jessie May Wolfe. Okay, everyone, I want to welcome Jessie May to the podcast. Welcome.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm pretty amped to have you here. As we were talking pre-show, I said my hyperness is going to be nice and balanced by your calmness. I think that's So Jessie May, let's dive right in. You know, they've listened to your bio, they've learned a little bit about the HeartRise movement in a very, very small dose. So can you kind of give us a little bit of your story and what led to this actual movement that you've created?
Absolutely. Well, I will say that I've always been curious. Even as a young kid, I was always very curious and sort of inquiring about everything and wanting to learn more and how did we get here, and just sort of had this real inquisitive nature as a child. And I grew up in Montreal. Without getting into the whole sort of story, I had many, many different paths and experiences and even careers. I'm very much drawn to the creative and the entrepreneurial fields. So I was an entrepreneur at a young age, really kind of built and created lots of little mini businesses, and that evolved into merging that with more creative work, and I got into a lot of the creative fields. So I, over the years, had my own marketing and design agency, had my own clothing line, pursued film and photography. All of those kind of interwove into what evolved as a coaching practice, having worked with many, many people over the years in different industries, and really merging the creative with the sort of desire to have this kind of entrepreneurial spirit. So I love the idea of putting ideas together and creating something, bringing people together
totally.
And creating something. So that kind of then emerged into coaching. I got disenchanted by a lot of the different industries, particularly when I had my clothing line, which was a creative endeavor. And it really kind of birthed the vision that has now become HeartRise. And I see the lineage, the narrative is really interesting to look back on my life and see how each chapter was important in the process. And I think that's an important piece for everyone to consider, is how important each step is. Sometimes we don't realize how meaningful a chapter can be until later. And so each piece for me has really contributed to the sort of movement that is now HeartRise. So fast forward, I got into coaching. I was working with a lot of creatives and entrepreneurs because that was my background. I supported the growth of a lot of different companies and was really interested in sort of the creative vision and what it meant to have passion and purpose, and to bring that into building something, creating something, whether it be a project, a company, an idea. I was working with a lot of thought leaders and creative entrepreneurs and supporting building businesses. And what I came to really see was how much I got into coaching. I studied and trained with different coaches and different programs. I'm giving you the super abbreviated version.
That's good. That's good.
But the coaching gave way to what I came to see is really having visionary ideas wasn't powerful until you really get the heart online. So this sort of desire to understand the human heart became really compelling to me. And what I mean by that is the sort of the heartbeat, the pulse, what lights us up. When I was really reflecting on my own life and on all the lives of those who I had been working with and supporting, was that in order to really have measured success, because again, the curiosity continued to play out. And what I saw was as I was seeing all these people with their dreams, when the passion and the conviction and the heartbeat was there, that's when there was this desire that surpassed any failures or any things that might be setbacks, things that would hold people back. So that became the sort of desire to uncover, and hence HeartRise was sort of born through many other chapters in between. But essentially, I followed the coaching path, which then gave birth to what has now become HeartRise, having integrated many different modalities. But HeartRise really brings the heart into the mix as far as a driving force to create all things. And I could say a lot more about it, but that's just a really quick snapshot.
Yeah. It's interesting because you bring up, business and entrepreneurship and then the heart. And, I'm sure a lot of people listening will think this because I've been in this place before. It's like, I got to hustle. It's always like another hustle.
Right.
And then you just kind of are looking for like the next quick fix to kind of help with the hustle. And then you kind of get so disconnected from your why or your heart that it becomes just a thing that you're doing, not a passion or a love project or whatever you want to call it.
Right. That's exactly right. And interestingly too, and such truth in what you say, what I found was that when you could really actively engage and harness the power of the heart, and when I started to understand just how powerful that was, I knew it was powerful, but when I got into sort of the study of the science of it and how it was working for others and how we could measurably engage with it, that's when it really got me excited, because there is a way that we can actually really plug into this power source. And just as an interesting piece, the electromagnetic field of the heart is great enough to light up a small city. The power in the heart is great enough to light up a small city. So you can it's powerful, right?
Yeah,
we're powerful.
Yeah.
So when you plug into that and you start working with that and you engage that and get the head online with the heart, then you've really got a good situation going.
Yeah. So do you feel that the heart kind of is the leader, the mover?
Yes.
And the mind has to kind of follow that in order to be, maybe I'm a chiropractor, but like using the word alignment for your purpose, right?
No, it's exactly that. It's really literally getting that alignment. So I like to say it's the head bowing to the heart. So, because the more intellectual among the people that I work, I've noticed when I'm working with a group of, let's say, architects or engineers or even medical doctors, oftentimes what I've seen is there's a resistance to some of the ideas about the heart because we've been really taught not to trust the heart. It's irrational, it's unreasonable, it's volatile, all these sort of ideas that we've been fed and indoctrinated from a young age. But actually, it's not to dismiss the brilliance of the mind and the intellect. It's actually, as you say, to find that alignment. And as I like to say, it's having the head bow to the heart. So you can still utilize the brilliance of the mind. You have this sort of resource, this library of brilliance, but indeed it's the heart that leads. And once you harness that power and you get the head to cooperate with it, which is initially a challenge in that the ego can be very resistant, but once you access that power, then you find this coherence or alignment, as you say, and then things start to really sing or flow.
Yeah. I like a lot of the words you just said, coherence, flow. So let's actually jump into some of the science, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm semi-nerdy.
Yeah.
And I know some of the listeners, we kind of like tone it down a little bit, but we can get a little nerdy at times. So You mentioned coherence.
Yes.
So explain what that is in terms of, when you're talking about the heart and the head bowing to the heart and all of these things.
Right. Well, so essentially what happens is most of the time we tend to go around and we're very pent up. Most people are really harboring and holding a lot inside. So they're stifling a lot of the, emotional matter. So we tend to be very contracted. So we're not expressed. The energy typically isn't really moving fluidly through the heart. So if you think of the heart as sort of this engine that you want to have running smoothly, it's super important to plug in and access that. So coherence is actually when you have a state between where the head, the mind is cooperating with the heart. Whereas most of the time, most people tend to be literally looping in the brain. They've shown, there's so many studies now, but on average, we tend to have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Now, most people tend to have the same 3 to 4 thoughts. That is officially insane. Einstein said it, right? The definition of insanity is doing or saying the same thing over and over again, and that's how most people live.
Times, right? 3 to 4 thoughts, 80,000 times. Holy crap.
Right. Bananas. We're all bananas.
Yeah.
So it's really when we actively understand that and we can really develop this coherence. So actively engaging with the heart, working with it. So finding more natural breathing rhythms, feeling through and healing through, getting the energy moving through the heart, then you can start to develop a coherent state where the head and the heart are talking to each other and flowing with each other. So, and it shows up as a more fluid state. So you're easier to be around, you're more able to respond versus react. Because when we're all pent up emotionally and we're holding everything, which is most people, and we put a smile on it, like, everything's fine. How are you? I'm okay. I'm great. Social media, the trappings are dangerous, right? It's like everyone's news feed, the highlight reel, Danger Bay, because it's not always the case. So it's that coherent state is finding synergy where you're actively plugging into the heart, listening to what's there, breathing with what's there, moving through what's there, and then having the head cooperate with it. So there's more to it, but that's kind of a quick...
Yeah, so this is pretty neat, just to keep this topic going for a second. I've seen meditation studies, like scientific neuroscience studies, showing the coherence and having conversations with people after that have been in these states.
Yes.
They talk about being connected to source. You know, like, holy cow, to be a little woo-woo for people, but God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, I don't really care. But being connected to it, it's pretty amazing. They said you can't really explain it when you get into one of those really amazing states, but it's, I'm sure you've experienced it yourself. I'm sure.
Yeah, and they've shown too that, it's the actual electromagnetic field too of the earth. So it goes even more than, it's our body and our being, but we're all connected to this field, if you will, this energetic field. And the more we can cultivate our own sort of sense of coherence within, the easier it is to be around others, the easier it is to recognize when things are off. So I like to talk about it in terms of vibes, because if I'm working with, I was just up at a high school in Santa Barbara, if I'm working with, like teens, moms, companies, I was just working with a sales team, or if I'm working with little kiddos, vibes, we all get vibes, right? So even beyond the science, the vibes there is science to it, the vibration and the frequency, but when we think about vibes, we know that we get vibes, right? You meet someone, they're putting out vibes. It's either some good juju and you're like, bring it in, or you're like, keep that over there. Thank you very much. Like, I'm not feeling you, right? So we do relate to the vibes. We just haven't been taught how to harness it. And we have this great resource inside that is this power center that actually understands and speaks in the language of vibes. So why wouldn't we want to tap into that, right?
I agree. I think that's a really neat way to think about it. And I just think about going to like an event or a party, and there are people that you just walk around, and there are people that you're like, well, I got to talk to that person. I got to meet that person. And that's so true. So true. And you're talking about tapping into that, which is the next level stuff.
Right.
Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's like getting back to the foundation is really probably what it is.
Yes, it is. Exactly. It's just returning home.
Yeah.
Because the kiddos get it. If anything, they're much more attuned to it. if anything we get conditioned into, children should be seen and not heard, and shut it down. So we actually lose touch with that natural sensibility to read the vibes.
So what do you think it is with like reading the vibes? You think is it a technology problem now, or has this been going on for like forever, like since the time of man, woman, right?
I think it's to some extent been going on, forever, in terms of the head's interference, or our, ego interference. And I think that it tends to happen now that we're more accessible, so that it's easier to sort of get, in a good way and a bad way. So we can get people to like all sort of co-sign something that may not be good for us, right? Where we can, our peer pressure, we can all get on board. And now with being online, it's a lot easier to have things sweep quickly. So that can be a good or a bad thing. But I do believe that, the conditioning can happen very young and early on. So a bad situation can arise, and then we can easily interpret that and have that sort of programmed into our operating system, our brain chemistry, as such a thing. So when that said situation arises again, we go to the default thinking around it. So, but the good news, and this is what's exciting, is the heart, when you start to, instead of just repressing the experience, the emotional experience, because that's what happens, that's why we get programmed in the faulty thinking. But instead, if we can really learn how to harness and be free to feel what's there, we let it go, we don't hold on. That's the secret sauce right there. It's to feel it and free it, to not harbor it, because that's when we hold on to stuff, then the faulty programming sets in. So I think to some degree it's always been there, to varying degrees in different cultures and environments. It's more supported and not, depending on the context.
Yeah, and you mentioned like that feeling, that heart feeling. I'm kind of having this thought in my head, like we all talk about like our gut feeling. So is that gut feeling kind of like our heart feeling?
It really is. It's not even wrong words. It is very much it's the same sort of energetic understanding. So yes, all of those are cues and signals. The heart is the greatest center and source for that energy. So it tends to pick it up there, but the gut feeling is very much in the same energy field. So so some people tend to experience it more in the gut, whereas others will experience it directly in the heart, but it's essentially the vibe kind of cues that we want to be paying attention to. So it is exactly that.
Okay. And so here's another question.
Yeah.
I belong to like a men's group, because I find men, tend to be, me included, tend to be more like sedated with life than women.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
To you. So do you see or sense that, one group of like men or women like have an easier time connecting to heart versus the other?
It's such an interesting question, and it's actually been coming up a lot lately, and it just in general, I found that because my sessions tend to be mixed, I have as many men and women, and in fact more men even lately than ever. I think in the advent and the context, the climate of Me Too, and there's just been a lot coming up right now in the media, and just so much that's coming to the surface, and just the planet is kind of upside down in many ways. And so there's a real, I think, desire to understand within all of us, and to be more honest, be more connected. So I would say that the desire lives in both. I think that it's a little bit easier for women to be public or vocal about their desire to be more connected to their heart. Men can sometimes be a little bit even off put by the word heart, like, oh, I don't want to open that, I don't know what's going to come out. We just did a big session in West Hollywood last night, and I'll often reference that and say, it's sort of, the heart can be this feeling center that is, it can be very frightening for most to even tap into. I don't want to open that. I don't know, what can ensue. So it's because we haven't been taught how to express in a healthy way or build that resilience or emotional intelligence, it can feel uncomfortable, I would say, more so for men. Yet at the same time, I'm finding more and more men that are coming to my sessions. And interestingly enough, too, have been finding my work through the book, which I think is an interesting commentary period, because it's almost like there's an anonymity and a safety in finding the book and then coming to a session, because it's like they'll find the book, read the book, be moved by it, and then they'll come to a class. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to seeing the word heart or HeartRise and be like, oh, that's what I need, right? So
Yeah.
it's almost like a safer passage through the book, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
they can kind of be in their own world
yes,
first before they have to
yes,
jump into a community.
exactly. So that's sort of been an interesting observation that I've made.
Okay, I just find it, as a chiropractor, I work with men and women. I take care of families, the whole nine yards, and
Mm-hmm.
men definitely are so much more stoic in every
Yeah.
way, even whether they're like an analytical person or a kinesthetic person or whatever it may be. I still
Mm-hmm.
have that sense that they're afraid to let go a little bit,
Right.
that they need to be
Yeah.
something that history
Need to
probably
feel
said they should be.
safe. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, they need, that's the thing, that they need to, exactly like men should be tough and strong and courageous. So men have been programmed and conditioned to think that they can't show feelings, or that it's soft or weak to be vulnerable. But actually, to be vulnerable and to be honest and to be real and to be sensitive is the most courageous. So it's a really beautiful thing. And I actually work with a lot of men and women specifically around this. And it's been amazing to see the men that I have worked with who have just seen radical shifts and transformation, because it actually helps to cultivate confidence and conviction and all the things that men actually want. But it's not coming from this puffed up bravado ego sensibility. It's instead coming from this fierce courage that is heartful and vibrational. So the vibes are real and people are feeling it. And it's remarkable to see with practice what that emotional resilience can bring for men and for women. But I do feel like men in particular are really, really calling that in, because there's been no forum for that for men. And women have more access, but I mean, for both, it's not been a really safe space for us to be emotionally open at all, really
Yeah.
in most contexts. So I think there's a new conversation emerging around what it means to be able to express safely what we're feeling and experiencing, and not be, and build that resilience so that we're able to respond and not be reactive, because that's where the fear comes from, that we're scared that the big rage or the big, tantrum or tears or whatever will come out. We don't want to show that because it's not peace, for all the conditioning. But actually, the more we build the resilience in a safe way, the stronger we can be to show up even when things are emotional.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah, being raw is not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Exactly.
It's just being your true self.
Exactly.
In the right context. That's not like showing up
Yeah.
like in a church or a temple or something and then having a burst out or something
Having
like
a
that.
burst. But, and sometimes that is okay. What I say is, if you have and you cultivate safe spaces where you can be all of yourself, feeling it all, so having a full outburst, all of that, the more we do that in safe circles and spaces and do it together, then the easier it is to be in a sort of public forum or in a work environment or wherever that may be, where you can have a safe, comfortable discourse with someone that you completely disagree with, or that might trigger you, but you're not triggered in the same way anymore because you've dealt with your emotions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And then also pre-show we were talking about, the vibe, if you will, of like what's going on the planet, and sensing that having this global effect, affecting our hearts.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I open the book and I speak to this a lot, but our longing to belong has never been greater. I really believe there's this deep, deep hunger and yearning in everyone to connect, and to really come home to who we are. There's this idea that we're meant to be something, or we're sort of striving so much of the time to get somewhere, this destination addiction, this hunger to get to or have, and all of these, the doing, the having, the going so fast. And it's this frenetic pace. And I really see that what we're actually just longing for, whether it's, in these contexts, working with inner city kids or war vets or families or, companies and really different environments, and seeing, and culturally too. I mean, I've really been in different contexts and communities and just witnessed the power of the human heart to heal and empower beyond boundaries. And I'm so passionate about it because we have the inherent wisdom. That's the good news. It's important to learn how we really do. Most of us are seeking it outside.
I'm smiling,
we're
we're born with all the goods.
Yes, we are. And we're chasing it outside, thinking, the next best thing, that is going to teach us or take us there. And I just heard this amazing, interesting stat. We were talking yesterday about programs online and courses online. And apparently there's a stat, something like 3% of people actually complete online programs, which is frightening. And when you think about it, and I think that goes, I mean, there's another, I've heard something similar about reading books. Most people get through the first 10 pages and then they on to the next. And we just have this sort of continuous cycle, this insatiable desire to get to this thing. And really when we actively learn how to plug into this power source inside of ourselves, it's really what we're all longing for. And then once we're in that, we actually start to feel a sense of belonging and connection with each other. And to be seen, to be heard, to be, why are we all craving the follow, like me, like me? It's just see me, love me. Like, it's not complicated. And if we could just do that within ourselves and show up like that for each other, like to actually listen to someone rather than just waiting for our turn to speak. I mean, these are all little ways, but it's amazing how much the heart, when you get it really actively engaged, can support us in our growth and our connection. And I believe that the bigger global narrative around that is that we can learn to commune and communicate and collaborate and have compassion, even for, those who are acting out, and, understanding that hurt people. The wounded hurt others. It's devastating. But until we start to shift the narrative around that, we'll just, the stones keep coming. And so it's, how can we shift that?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say hurt people hurt other people. If I bring this back to a more simplistic thing for people is, if you've ever been in pain, you're usually a lot grumpier.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's like it happens.
Yeah.
And then it's a pretty neat concept to think of it on a big scale, the way you're talking about, because it's almost like a domino effect.
Yeah. And I love to say, our radiance is contagious, and that's in its highest form. So when you're activated and ignited and heart powered, it's contagious. Conversely, that pain energy too, like you described, and fear can also be pervasive and contagious. So if we're not mindful, or as I like to say, heartful, we can easily get into that contracted space where that toxic energy can take hold of us and those around us. But conversely, once we learn how to move through what we're holding and actively take care of our own well-being, it has this contagious, beautiful effect on those around us. So it can help to extend our heart and build this sort of this more vibrational, like higher vibes for everyone, rather than the opposite, which can also happen if we're not careful.
Yeah, and here's just another thought, to bounce off you. When we just talk about connection and that heart connection, and this is just my experience, there's no more community anymore anywhere that I go. I can walk through New York City and, walk past, we'll say 1,000 people, and 5% of them will like, eyes will meet, or they'll say hi or something like that. I was doing a 9-mile run a couple days ago, and I passed a group of guys and men and women on road bikes. They were pedaling past me the other direction.
Right.
And that's just me being me, waving, saying hi. I think one person out of probably about the 70 or 80 of them waved, or even acknowledgement. I'm like, really?
Wow.
What's the deal?
Wow.
I still feel like a community, like we're so disconnected from each other. It's wild.
We are. And, and I really agree. And what I find too, what's happening now, and I love, look, technology is amazing, and social media can be great, and it can also be a real place for people to hide out. And it's easy to do that, to sort of seem like we're connected. I hear this often in workshops and classes I teach, where, people are super, we were just having this conversation too about how, someone can be like a big online, YouTube star or whatnot, or have tons of followers and lots of community and be chatting and engaging with everyone. And the minute you put them in a real face-to-face, never mind Facebook, but FaceTime, real time.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they're frozen, and because they haven't built the sort of emotional wherewithal and the social skills to show up as a human being. So I think actually what's happened is we've become so used to these little devices and just being online so much of the time that we've also really lost touch with that human connection. And so I think the in real life experience piece is super valuable and very important. And the more we can practice, even in our close communities. But the more we can practice just being honest and authentic and real with each other and heartful with each other, the easier it is, like you described on your run, to be out and to smile. And, I used to, and I still love to, I moved, so I'm not quite as close, but to jog on the beach here in LA barefoot and go running and just, be smiling and, my hair free and barefoot and just right down by the water's edge and smile, same thing. And I could always tell based on connecting or smiling at others how present they were, whether they would connect or not, like you say, whether their eyes meet or the smile comes back. And, the more connected we are, the easier it is to call that out in others. So I think the more we do our own work, the more we can actually inspire our community around us.
Yeah, totally. I agree 100%. I think that's so important, just like you said, the disconnect is so real and so vast that, like my wife's a speech therapist in a school, and talk about just having a conversation with a child, or they don't know how to do this anymore. They don't know how to talk, to interact. It's like I can do a text message for someone who's sitting 4 feet away from me, like, because I don't want to use words or look at them or whatever it is. So I think there's going to be a change. There has to be. There's going to be a shift.
There has to be. And I think we're all doing our part. I'm always moved to see. Last night, no exception. We had a beautiful full house. I teach a regular class here at the Den, and it was men and women, and sharing after, and we always circle up. So we're in circle. We're not in a linear way, and people share after and use their voice. And as I like to share, the voice is the bridge between the heart and the head. And the more we can practice using our voice with heart and conviction, the more impact we can have. So we do need practice. We do need healthy spaces where we can do that, and seeking out others or listening to podcasts like this where we can get nourished, all really important.
So now we've been talking about all this connection and the heart and flow and coherence. What are some of the ways that people can start to do this? Maybe at home, what can I do? Or not at home, forget at home, maybe in a community.
I love it. I love it. Well, there's several. The HeartRise Method that I teach, there's 4 steps. I won't get into the whole method, but I will say that the first step, and it's something to pay attention to, is with heart vision I see. So with any meditation or with any real shift that we want to make or change in our lives that we want to create, we have to be aware. We have to be able to see and witness ourselves in an honest way. So with heart vision I see is just allowing yourself to check in, and you do it with breath and with heart, but simply as just a good practice for anyone listening, to start to pay attention to the situations or the people that might trigger you or offset, just change your state. So just to be aware of that, to start to pay attention, because we don't realize how much we pick up the energy of others, how much we absorb from the environments that we're in. So it's just to really start to check in and witness and observe how we're being affected by the different places and spaces and people in our lives. So that's just a good thing to start to watch. I do different exercises around paying attention to, it could be anywhere from the 5 to 10 people you spend the most time with, and observing how you are when you're with them, how you feel after you've spent time, just to start checking in. Because again, if we're not actively watching and witnessing how our lives are playing out, then we're not participating in any changes we might want to make. So that's sort of a first piece, is just to start to pay attention. I like to suggest even just very simple heart-focused breathing, which is just bringing attention and awareness back to the heart and feeling for your heartbeat and breathing. We do a longer process with that, like the full method normally for people when they wake up. But even just that, when you wake up in the morning, before you pick up your device, because everybody does, just to lie there in bed and to bring your hand or both hands over your chest and to breathe with your heart. What a concept. Just to plug into your own heartbeat instead of whatever the first thing that you see on your phone is, because that's how we start our day. We'll just literally set the day, the tone of the day, based on whatever the first text or thing in the news feed or shows up. And then that's what sets the tone. So that's practically something you can do. I would also say just to cultivate, maybe it's to see if there's a place or a space that might have some resources for you for the kind of heartful community that we're speaking of. So maybe it's, I mean, Meetup is great. There's so many resources online depending on where you are. I know some locations are a little more abundant than others, but there are a lot of places and spaces where there's community. But finding places where you can start practicing being more of yourself. If you feel like there's not a lot of environments that let you just be yourself, to see if you can find more of that in your community, because that helps to be around people that support your growth.
That's so true.
Listening to podcasts like these too helps a lot as well.
Yeah.
But community, surrounding yourself with people and some practice stuff. I'm also going to offer, and we talked about this, but I'm happy to share a guided HeartRise meditation with listeners too, so that if you're interested, the method is something that really does help.
Very cool. We'll put all those details though definitely in the show notes so people can start to meditate. If you're not doing it, it's something you should consider. I know we spoke about meditation on the podcast before, so there are different types, and we mentioned this is a guided meditation, right?
Yeah, it's guided. Yeah,
so it's going to lead you to where you should help you, or like kind of be a beacon for you.
Right. And it's an active meditation too for anyone who's practiced and struggled with meditation. Like I was one of those people. So it really helps you kind of direct the attention to the heart and work with breath and move it so that you're not just trying to sort of quiet the busy or the constant narrative of the chronic thinking mind, but actually you're working with cultivating that strength with your heart. So it's a different approach, and it tends to resound well. So hopefully it'll appeal to your listeners. Yeah.
Good. So then another question. You've mentioned a couple of times that you're doing this with schools, or you're doing it with businesses. And I just in my head, in New York City, I'm thinking, okay, she's going to go into XYZ corporation or law firm or something, and she's going to be light and flowy, and then these people are going to be like these gray suited monsters walking at her. So how does it work in business?
That's a great question. I love that question. And I absolutely love being able to go into companies and bring this. It's been really inspiring actually to see the response. Typically the way it's happened has been very organic. So it's usually been someone who's come to one of my classes or sessions or knows of someone who has had a really powerful experience, it's all been referral. So that's sort of how initially I've been brought in. Now it's starting to happen a little more again, but it's all been word of mouth pretty much. And what happens is I'll go in and I'll do anything from a 1 hour intro session to a half day to a full day. We do retreats as well, on or off site. And I will work with teams as small as 12, as big as we've done up to 75. So, and then there can be breakouts, so that essentially teaching, it's a mix of workshops or teaching and interactive play sort of exercises where you're actually doing these HeartRise reframes and using the method to practically take examples from the workplace or from team dynamics. I work with a lot of conflict resolution, work with a lot of, the leadership teams and all the different teams too, because a big part of working with the energy of the heart is how can we get away from this more siloed, linear hierarchical infrastructure that so much of the industrial world was built on into this more collaborative space. Because, the whole new world of even the workplace, you see co-working, and it's mobile workplace now, and just interactivity and digital interface. And there's so much that's changing. So how can we adapt and be still really communicating and connected in that? So it gives people at companies powerful tools they can use themselves, they can use to communicate with their teams, they can use I work with a lot of creative and marketing teams. So we have these, what we call heart storming sessions, which are really powerful, where people are creatively building together and collaborating and getting super juicy ideas, because the most brilliant ideas come from this intuitive, heartful wisdom, and not from I got to hammer this idea home and, overthink it.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of creative, people here in the industry. So people who might have writer's block, or, working with directors, or people that have a lot of big projects that they're handling, how to be still this creative, inspirational leader and not lead with force and domination, but more to inspire your team. So it's super rewarding. And, initially, even if they might hear HeartRise or I show up in my, because I'm stylish. I used to be a stylist. I sell my own clothing line. So, and my style is definitely a little bohemian chic. So I'll come in a caftan or what have you. I don't hold back. And, initially sometimes I get the woo, what have we got going on? And, and then the moment though that I have even just my presence, but just the moment I'll even make eye contact or connect with anyone, right away they feel safe. The guard comes down because again, it's how we show up. The energy is felt. And it's been a real gift to be able to show up and, whether it's, again, working with war vets or corporate CEOs or inner city kids, I show up the same way in my heart and people feel that. So it's really a gift to be able to show up in this way.
Yeah, I wonder after you're doing, an event, we'll say like a corporation,
yeah,
if these companies are like, okay, not only do we understand this, but now we need to reorganize the way the actual physical structure of the inside of the building, the architecture is. Because I've done events in the city, and I don't want to name the corporations, but I've been in a couple places where, it was so, to me, just stale. Like there was no heart, if you will, anywhere. It's like, okay, like we have lanes and we have this. And then I did an event, it'll be 4 or 5 years ago, at this space from a designer.
Right.
And it was just probably, I don't know, 30,000 square foot warehouse with giant curtains just separating and all completely open so you can interact with anybody and everybody. There are workspaces in the middle. I'm like, you just feel super comfortable.
Right.
Walking into a space like that.
Yes.
It literally changes the vibe.
It totally does. And I love that you're saying that because it's very true that, by bringing in this sort of experience, it also does inspire that kind of like reflection, like how can we change saying whether it's the space and how it's laid out or even how we structure our meetings, for example, or how we organize our global team. And it just, it really, it shakes things up. And because when we get too automated, and I see this a lot with old school companies, especially some of the bigger ones that I work with, where they're just so set in their ways, it's remarkable how, it can become so rote. We just get so, we just sort of follow the same and expecting, again, it's the same insanity that I spoke of that we were talking about earlier, right? So It's important to shake it up and to inspire new energy. And then you get your people on board and they're enthusiastic. And then it's remarkable you get all those hearts lit up and all that power. It's, we're, and all working towards the same vision too, because that's the exciting piece is once you get people in a company lit up, when your people are on purpose and passionate, watch out, that affects the bottom line. So and the space is part of that too. So I love that you brought that up because certainly
because I sensed it, like I walked into this huge space. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Like it's not that it just looks cool. Like you actually, you got a sense that people were excited to be there. It was very, very, very interesting experience compared to what I've been in before.
Right.
Holy cow.
Right. And more the companies are recognizing that. So I've been in some pretty cool, innovative spaces where I'd say the newer generation of companies are really aware of how important the space itself is.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So I have one other question before we want to wrap up in a minute here, but I'm not sure if it was before show, during the show, or when we first chatted a little while back. You mentioned connection is our greatest currency.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
It's essentially the energy, the currency of the heart that is, I believe, our greatest power. And so when I say connection is our greatest currency, it's our capacity to return home to this heart, this connection with ourselves and with each other. That is the currency that I believe is going to shift things on the planet. I really do. I see what's possible. And, everything is energy. We know this. Right now, currency is in monetary form. That's changing now in the digital space with blockchain and, Bitcoin and digital currency. So it's already changing a lot. But at the end of the day, it's all energy. And if we could learn how to harness the greatest currency there is, which is our human currency, our energetic currency, our heart currency, which I believe is the connection currency, then everything starts to change because we have compassion for each other. We want what's best for each other. We may not agree with everyone that, in different opinions and such, but once we get on the same energetic currency, once we're all recognizing that, what's going to hurt for you is eventually going to hurt for me. And it's hard for us to conceptualize that because we've been so programmed to be me, me, me.
Mm-hmm.
But once we start to shift that and recognize that and be empowered by how good that even feels to start showing up. I mean, we all know how good it feels to do something for another, right? It's, that gift of giving is infinite in what we receive. So when we start to really actively show up and contribute, which I believe is such an important part of that connection currency, how we show up, how we give, how we receive, and then it becomes this abundance. And I really believe it's the currency that can help us change what needs to happen on the planet, because clearly the currency that we've got going on is not working for us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty wild, kind of always circling back to like the human community, and that vibrational tone of being around people that are exciting or excited. It totally rubs off, and giving. I mean, you brought up like so many, I think, important things that we all take for granted.
Right.
It's just like we only give gifts when it's required. And I don't necessarily mean even a physical gift, but, we think of like a holiday or something, and that's when we have to do something.
Right.
So it's not even that exciting.
Right.
Doing that.
So. Exactly. It's that, and that's such a beautiful piece you bring up, because it's more about showing up and giving of ourselves, and doing the meaningful things that are unexpected and not expected. Because when there's expectation, it's, as you say, it's a little more, it's not authentic. So the currency is a little bit shaky.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So how do our guests get a hold of you? What are the best places besides your website?
Yeah, I would say probably Instagram we're pretty good on. So the HeartRise Movement account there. I have my personal account too. But yeah, the website is great. The podcast, I have a podcast too, and we're bringing, and actually that was fun because I brought it back. I used to have it on years ago before the podcast were a thing, and then got really busy building HeartRise and was asked upon many requests, brought it back. So that's back, High on Heart. That's on Apple and all the different, sort of SoundCloud and all of those places and spaces. I do live events, and so I'm mostly in New York and LA, primarily based in LA. And then I also bring HeartRise into companies and schools and organizations. So I'm really available. If anyone listening is curious to learn more, please don't be shy. I'm happy to come and share with your community.
Awesome. I'm glad, because I was super excited when we were able just to connect over the phone via third party. I'm like, this is pretty cool. Right?
Amazing.
Connection, right? It's pretty neat.
Connection. It is. Yeah. And I would love to gift everyone too, like we said, a guided meditation. Oh, and the book, I don't always, but I often forget. The book is a really great tool, something just to have. It's pretty. I wrote and designed it too. So for anyone curious to learn more about the method, I've sort of unpacked it in this bit of a visual odyssey, but it's practical, it's cheeky, it's playful, it's got really good tools in there, and it's something you can just kind of keep around, and it's an easy throw in your bag. It's 5x8, so it's an unconventional size, and it's colorful and fun as a gift, so that's another good tool.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Listen, everybody, if you haven't figured one way, you have a dozen ways now to connect with her, with Jessie May. So you can listen to her on her podcast. You can connect with her multiple places online, and possibly even in person. So if you're someone that wants to bring her in, if you you run a company or you work for a company, you really vibe with this, reach out, because she will actually get back to you.
Yes, I will.
She will get back to you. So Jessie May, I want to thank you so much. This was actually really great. I'm very grateful to have you on, and I hope we can stay connected via the airwaves and possibly in person at some point.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure, Josh, really. I love what you're doing here. It was really an absolute joy to have this conversation, and I love all of the work you're bringing to the world, and I look forward to it. I could definitely see a little collaboration or an event of some kind, so I look forward to that, and really thank you again, and to all of you listening, I really appreciate your time and your hearts, so thank you.
Locker Nation, I hope you enjoyed Jessie May Wolfe and HeartRise. What an amazing and heartfelt interview. I mean, I absolutely loved it, and I'm listening to it again already for a second time. by the time this is released. So make sure you connect with her, make sure you download and go ahead and get that guided meditation that she's giving all of our listeners. It is free, right? It is free. And you can connect with her any way, shape, or form. We'll have all her details in the show notes. So you can find her online, you can find her on social media, and maybe even find her and get her for a live event. Also, make sure you are following us on social media if you are not doing that already. That is facebook.com/lifestyle locker and instagram.com/Dr. Josh Hant. I love to keep up with all of you as well. Your lives and healthy lifestyles are so important to me, and I want to make sure we're bringing the best content to you. So if you do like what you're listening to and what you're hearing here, make sure you go over to iTunes where it counts, leave us a 5-star review, and also hit that subscribe button. And if you find that someone else may need to hear some of these messages we're sharing, send the podcast over to them. I would greatly appreciate it, and so will they. So until next time, Locker Nation, have a good day, afternoon, evening, and night. Peace out.